Hi, before we find out what happens next, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. It takes a second and really help us grow. Out of the story.
Bianca had been by my side for as long as I could remember. From scraped knees on the playground to late-night study sessions, we'd been inseparable. People used to say we were like sisters, and for most of my life, I believed that was true. I trusted her the way you trust the sky to hold the stars, unquestioning, unshakable. The night that should have been one of the happiest of my life, she stood beside me at the party Caleb threw for my birthday. Her arm looped through mine, her smile as bright as the candles flickering on my cake. But behind that smile, something else lived. Something I was only beginning to see. "Make a wish, Emma," Caleb said, leaning close, his hand warm at the small of my back. His voice was soft enough that only I could hear. I glanced at him, at the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, and felt a rush of gratitude. This was what happiness looked like, or so I thought. I blew out the candles to cheers and applause. Bianca hugged me, whispering in my ear, "You're so lucky. He's perfect." Her tone was light, but I caught the edge beneath it, like a blade hidden in silk. I laughed it off, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, telling myself I imagined it. Later, as the night wore down, I watched Caleb refill Bianca's glass. The way she touched his arm lingered a beat too long. The way his laugh came a little too easy at her joke. Small things, things you could explain away. But they sat with me, sharp and unwelcome. I told myself it was nothing. Bianca loved me. Caleb loved me. I was imagining shadows where there was only light. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered what I wasn't ready to hear. "Look closer." The days after the party passed in a blur of work and routine, but Bianca was around more than usual. She showed up unannounced with coffee, invited herself along on dinners Caleb and I had planned for just the two of us, and always with that same easy smile that made it impossible to refuse. Her texts came at odd hours. "What are you two up to?" Or "Mind if I swing by?" At first it felt sweet, like old times. Then it started to feel like surveillance. One evening, we all ended up at our usual spot, a cozy Italian place on the corner. Caleb had his arm draped over the back of my chair, but Bianca dominated the conversation, leaning in toward him, laughing at his every word like he was the most fascinating person in the room. "You're hilarious, Caleb." "Seriously, Emma, where have you been hiding him?" she said, flashing him a smile that was a shade too warm. I tried to join in, to remind myself this was normal. This was Bianca. She was my best friend. This was fine. Or so I told myself. But when she brushed imaginary lint from Caleb's sleeve, something in me flinched. Caleb didn't pull away. If anything, he seemed to enjoy the attention. I pushed my pasta around my plate, my appetite gone. She complimented his shirt, asked about his work projects in detail she'd never shown interest in before. Every answer he gave, she met with admiration that felt rehearsed. That night, as we walked home, I finally said it. "Do you think Bianca's been different lately? Like, overly involved?" Caleb glanced at me, brows raised. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Just more present, with us. More focused on you, like tonight." She barely looked at me. He laughed, easy and dismissive. "Emma, she's your friend. She's just being friendly. Don't overthink it." I nodded, forcing a smile. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But as I lay awake that night, Bianca's voice echoed in my mind. Her laugh, her gaze that seemed to linger too long on Caleb's face. And that quiet voice returned, stronger this time. "Look closer." Bianca's presence became a constant thread in the fabric of my days, woven so tightly that I couldn't tell where she ended and my life with Caleb began. She started suggesting plans that included him, brunches, movie nights, weekend hikes she used to complain about. At first, I welcomed the familiarity. Then I began to notice the patterns, the way her gaze always found him, the way she positioned herself beside him as if it were the most natural thing. One Saturday afternoon, we met at a local market. Caleb went ahead to grab drinks, leaving Bianca and me by a flower stall. The air smelled of rosemary and fresh bread, but tension hung between us. I watched her fingers trail over the petals of a sunflower, and before I could stop myself, the words tumbled out. "Bianca, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I expected. "You've seemed different lately. I just want to make sure you're all right." She looked up at me, blinking as if startled. Then she smiled, all sweetness on the surface. Different? No. I mean, maybe I'm just trying to make more time for you. And Caleb. You both mean so much to me. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something in her tone. Too smooth. Too polished. You know you can tell me if something's wrong, I added, hoping, searching for a reason that would make this feel less strange. You worry too much, Em. She gave my arm a quick squeeze. Don't overthink it. That night, as Caleb and I sat on the couch, I tried again. Do you think Bianca's crossing a line? I asked if she was okay today. She brushed it off, but I don't know. It's been odd. He shook his head, arm draped lazily around my shoulder. Emma, she's your friend. She cares about you. Don't turn this into something it's not. But it already was. And as I watched him scroll through his phone, oblivious to my unease, I felt the first real flicker of distance between us, a space Bianca seemed all too ready to fill. It started with small moments I tried to explain away. Caleb's sudden late meetings, Bianca's texts that came at odd hours. Any chance Caleb's free to help me with my sink? Or mind if I borrow him for a quick favor? I wanted to believe it was harmless, that Bianca was just leaning on us like she always had. But doubt grew, quiet and insistent. One evening, after Caleb canceled dinner for the second time that week, claiming he had to stay late at work, I decided to stop waiting. I walked the few blocks to his office, hoping to surprise him, to prove myself wrong. But he wasn't there. The receptionist said he'd left an hour earlier. My feet moved before I could think, carrying me toward the one place that had started to feel suspicious without reason, the cafe where Bianca liked to go. And there they were, Caleb and Bianca, sitting close, heads bent together over a shared dessert. She laughed, touching his wrist, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. My heart clenched, but I didn't move. I stood there, hidden by the corner, watching as the truth unfolded in front of me. The next day, I confronted them. I kept my voice steady as I spoke. I saw you, at the cafe, together. Bianca didn't even flinch. Emma, I won't insult you by pretending it's not true. Caleb and we didn't plan it, but here we are. Caleb looked at me then, guilt written all over his face. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. And yet it did, I said, my voice hollow. You could have told me. Bianca's smile sharpened. Told you? What would that have changed? You always had everything. Maybe it's my turn. I let the silence settle between us before I rose. Then have it. I hope it's worth it. And I left, the weight lifting with every step I took away from them. A few months passed. The initial sting of betrayal had dulled, replaced by something steadier. Acceptance, maybe. The kind that lets you get out of bed without your heart sinking, that lets you breathe without tasting bitterness. Life moved forward, and so did I. It was on an unremarkable afternoon that I ran into Paul at the corner bakery. The scent of warm bread wrapped around us as we exchanged the kind of small smiles shared by people with too much history and too little left to say. Emma, he said, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets. You look well. Thanks, Paul. I feel steadier. He glanced away, then back. I wasn't sure if I should bring this up, but I figured you'd want to know. Caleb, things haven't been great for him. He lost that big account at work, the one he was banking on. I hear he's struggling. I folded my arms just to keep the chill at bay. I'm not surprised. Paul hesitated. And Bianca? I shook my head. Let's not make this about her. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. I guess choices have a way of catching up. They always do, I said, and I meant it. We parted ways, and as I walked home, I realized I hadn't thought about Caleb in weeks. The weight I'd carried for so long felt a little lighter with each step. The first time I ran into Caleb's older brother again was at a bookstore. I was thumbing through a collection of essays, savoring the rare quiet of a Saturday morning, when his voice broke through my focus. Emma? I turned, startled, to find him standing a few feet away, a coffee in one hand, a paperback in the other. He looked much the same, calm, collected, with that quiet confidence that seemed to settle any room he entered. Where Caleb always carried himself with easy charm that frayed under pressure, Samuel's steadiness felt unshakable. Samuel, I said, managing a smile. It's been a while. He nodded, his expression warm but measured. It has. I wasn't sure if I should say hello. I didn't want to intrude. His thoughtfulness disarmed me. You're not. It's good to see you. There was a beat of quiet before he gestured toward a small table near the window. Would you sit with me for a bit? I hesitated, then followed. Conversation came slowly at first, but smoothed out with each word. We spoke of books, of work, of small, ordinary things. His questions were thoughtful, his attention steady in a way that made me feel seen without being exposed. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words felt considered, kind. At last, the subject we'd both been circling found us. I heard from Caleb, Samuel said quietly. I'm sorry. I wish things had been different for you. You don't have to be sorry for him, I replied. That's not your weight to bear. Maybe not, he said, glancing out at the street where the light caught in the trees. But I always thought you deserved better. And I think deep down, Caleb knew it too. Something in his tone, so free of pity and full of quiet respect, eased a tightness I hadn't known I was holding. And as we spoke, I realized what set him apart. He was the kind of man who didn't need to declare his loyalty or strength. He simply lived it. Samuel and I started running into each other more often. A coffee here, a walk through the park, small conversations that felt natural. He didn't talk just to fill silence. He listened, asked good questions, and didn't expect anything back. That steadiness was something I hadn't realized I missed until it was there. One afternoon, we walked by the river. The sun was low, the air cool. We talked about simple things, books we liked, work, little things that made the day better. He mentioned a charity event he'd helped with recently and how he liked being part of it without anyone making a fuss. I guess I've always liked people who don't need to be seen doing everything, Samuel said. It's easier to be around that. I smiled. I think I've been looking for that without realizing it. Maybe a lot of us are, he said. But it's harder to relax around people who always need attention. Like it's not really about sharing time. It's about being noticed. I looked at him. You've seen that in people? Now and then, he said. It makes things feel less real, like you're just part of their show. He glanced at me. Sorry, that probably sounds unfair. No, I said. It sounds true. I thought about it. I think I've confused that kind of show for real connection before. He nodded. We all have at some point. What matters is what we do after. We kept walking, and as his words replayed in my mind, I realized he wasn't just speaking in general terms. Without saying it, he was talking about Bianca, and somehow, that made me feel less alone. The next time I saw Bianca was at a mutual friend's engagement party. I hadn't expected her to be there, but there she was, standing near the bar, laughing too loudly at a joke someone barely finished telling. She stood out, as always, dressed to draw every eye, her gestures exaggerated just enough to keep the attention on her. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment I thought she might look away. But she didn't. She lifted her chin, as if daring me to approach, as if the past could be erased with one confident stare. Samuel was nearby, chatting easily with a small group, but I caught the flicker of his glance in my direction, a quiet check-in. He didn't need to say anything. I felt the steady reassurance in his presence. I took a slow, steadying breath and walked toward the refreshments table instead, refusing to give the moment more weight than it deserved. Bianca found me a few minutes later, weaving through the crowd with practiced ease. Her smile was wide, too wide, her voice sweet but edged when she spoke. Emma, you look... Well, I'm glad to see you out and about. I was starting to wonder if you'd gone into hiding. I turned to face her fully, meeting her gaze head-on. No hiding, just living. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. That's good. I mean, it must be hard, seeing Caleb move on. But I suppose we all have to adjust, don't we? I think we all do, I said calmly. Some of us adjust. Some of us grow. It's not always the same thing, she laughed a little too sharply. Always so clever? I suppose it helps, pretending you're above it. I'm not pretending anything, Bianca. I let my voice stay soft, but sure. I meant what I said. I wish you both the best. She hesitated, the mask slipping for just a second. You always make it look so easy. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, watching as her confidence wavered under the weight of it. Around us, the party moved on, clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, music rising and falling. But in that small space, it felt like the only sound was our breathing. Why did you really come over here, Bianca? I asked finally. Was it to check on me, or to check if I'm still broken? Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time, she looked uncertain. I don't know, maybe both. Well, I'm not, I said, my tone gentle, but final. You don't have to worry. I could feel Samuel's presence behind me again, as if he'd quietly moved closer, though he still said nothing. His steady calm filled the space Bianca's bravado left empty. Bianca forced a smile, but her eyes had lost their shine. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Maybe I always was, I said, and walked away, leaving her standing there. The strongest thing I could do was exactly that. Walk on without looking back. In that moment, I understood something clearly for the first time. Bianca had never really seen me, not as I was, but only as a mirror for what she wanted to be. The days after the party felt lighter somehow. I hadn't realized how much space Bianca's shadow had taken up in my mind until I stepped out from under it. Samuel and I crossed paths again, first by chance, then more intentionally. Coffee, quiet walks, long talks about everything and nothing. His company didn't feel like a distraction. It felt like peace. Word of Bianca and Caleb trickled in, not because I asked, but because people couldn't resist sharing. A mutual friend mentioned Caleb had lost a big client, that his charm wasn't enough to keep doors open anymore. Another said Bianca seemed restless, frustrated that the world wasn't as impressed with her as she thought it would be. One afternoon, as Samuel and I sat on a bench overlooking the river, he glanced over, thoughtful. It's strange, isn't it? How people think what they take from others will fill the empty spaces in themselves. I nodded, watching the water catch the light, and how fast those spaces seem to grow once they try. He smiled gently. You see it clearly now. I think I finally do. We fell into an easy silence, the kind that comes when words have done their work. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't looking back anymore, only ahead. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt natural, unforced. Samuel and I spent more time together, not out of need, but because it felt right. We'd meet for coffee before work, take Max for long walks on quiet streets, or sit in the park watching the world go by. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was easy in the way that things are when both people have nothing to prove. One morning, as we walked along a path lined with early spring blooms, Samuel slowed his steps. Emma, he said, glancing at me, his voice quieter than usual. Can I ask you something, and I want you to be honest? Of course, I said, curious. He took a breath. Do you feel ready? I mean, not for anything specific? Just for this. For us. I stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Samuel, I think I've been ready for something real for a long time. I was just looking in the wrong places. His shoulders relaxed a little. I don't want to rush you. I care about you. A lot. And I'd rather take this slow than risk making you feel like you have to choose anything before you're sure. I smiled. That's what makes me sure. That you'd say that. We kept walking, and he reached for my hand without another word. That was Samuel. Steady, patient. And it was enough. Our relationship unfolded quietly after that. There were no grand declarations, no need for the world's approval. We chose each other each day in small ways that built something solid. When we decided to marry, it was a small gathering, just close friends and family. No spectacle, just us, beginning something real. As we stepped out into the sunlight after the ceremony, Samuel squeezed my hand. Ready? I looked at him, at the life we'd chosen together. More than ever. Time passed quietly after Samuel and I began our life together. But peace has a way of being interrupted, and soon enough, we found ourselves pulled, however gently, back into the edges of Caleb's world. It started one afternoon when Samuel and I went to meet Caleb at a small cafe, his request. Caleb was already there, slumped over his coffee, looking thinner, worn down. When he lifted his head, his eyes were hollow, the charm he once wore like armor nowhere to be seen. Thanks for coming, Caleb said, his voice low. He glanced between us, unable to hold either of our gazes. I didn't know who else to ask. Samuel kept his tone steady. What's going on? Caleb rubbed his face with both hands. It's bad. I'm out of work. I'm behind on rent. And Bianca, she's gone. Left last week. Said she needed someone who could keep up with her. I felt Samuel's hand brush mine under the table. A quiet reassurance, not for him, but for me. Caleb looked up, desperate. I know I've made a mess of everything. I don't expect anything. I need help figuring out what to do next. Samuel nodded slowly. We'll talk it through. But Caleb, this can't be about patching things up for a week or two. You have to want to change this for good. I do, Caleb said, though even he sounded unsure. We spent hours with him that day, going over options, offering support where we could. I saw the weight Samuel carried as he guided his brother, firm but kind. And when we left, walking side by side into the evening, I felt no anger toward Caleb, only a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally face himself. In the weeks that followed, Samuel helped Caleb rebuild, step by step. I was there for many of the conversations, quiet at first, just listening, watching as Samuel's steady guidance filled the space where Caleb's charm had once covered his faults. Caleb tried, I could see that, but there was a weariness in him, the weight of choices that had finally caught up. One evening, Samuel and I went out for dinner at a small restaurant we'd always liked. We were seated at a table near the window, the warm glow of the place softening the night outside. As I glanced up from the menu, I froze for a beat. There, across the room, wearing the uniform of the restaurant, was Bianca. She carried a tray, moving briskly between tables. When our eyes met, she hesitated. Then, gathering herself, she approached our table. "Emma, Samuel," she said, trying to keep her voice even. "Didn't expect to see you here tonight." "Neither did we," Samuel replied, his tone polite but guarded. Bianca shifted the tray in her hands. "I'll be your server this evening." There was a pause. I met her gaze and spoke calmly. "Thank you, Bianca. We'd like some water to start." "Of course," she said, and hurried off. When she returned, placing the glasses down, she glanced at me. "You look well, Emma." "I am well," I said, my voice steady. "I hope you're doing okay, too." Her mask faltered for a second, trying my best. Samuel reached for my hand under the table as we ordered. We spoke of simple things, plans for the weekend, small joys, and though Bianca came and went, I felt no bitterness. When we rose to leave, I caught her eye one last time. "Take care, Bianca." "You too," she said quietly. And as we stepped out into the night, I felt the final thread between us fall away.